There was no question really about their guilt. They accepted that they'd taken on sabotage. They hadn't done very much. They'd blown up a few things.
So everybody said, yeah, there is no escape. These people are going to die. But hoping that perhaps at that moment, God will be next to the judge.
That led to the Rivonia trial, which was paid for entirely by us.
Often referred to as the trial that changed South Africa in October 1963, 10 leading opponents of apartheid went on trial for their lives on charges of sabotage, one of them being Nelson Mandela. Nelson Mandela was a civil rights leader in South Africa. He fought against apartheid, a system where non-white citizens were segregated from whites and did not have equal rights. He served a good portion of his life in prison for his protests, but became a symbol for his people. In what was arguably the most profound moment in the trial, Nelson Mandela made a speech in the dock in which he condemned the very court in which he was appearing as illegitimate. He then proceeded to argue that the laws in place were equally harsh and defiance of these laws was justified.
My name is Nelson Mandela. I'm the first accused. I do not deny that I planned sabotage. I did not plan it in the spirit of recklessness, nor because I have any love for violence. The hard facts are that 50 years of non-violence had brought the African people nothing but more and more repressive legislation and fewer rights. Africans want a just share in the whole of South Africa. We want equal political rights. One man, one vote. I have dedicated myself to this struggle of the African people. I have fought against white domination. I have fought against black domination. I have cherished the ideal of a free, democratic society where all persons live together in harmony with equal opportunities. It is an ideal which I hope to live for and achieve. But, if needs be, it is an ideal for which I am prepared to die.
The accused and many others within the movement said that they did not believe in violence to achieve goals. However, 50 years have passed with no violence, and that had brought the African people fewer and fewer rights and more repressive legislation. All other efforts to change the legal system and society had failed. Therefore, they had no other choice than to follow through with violence to be able to share their message and make a change. For example, the massacre of unarmed protesters at Sharperville near Vereeniging in the province of Transvaal on the 21st of March 1960. This was a turning point in the history of South Africa. What began as a peaceful march by Pan-Africanist Congress supporters to the police station in protest against the passed laws and calling for a minimum monthly wage of £35 was turned into a massacre when police fired at the protesters, killing 69 people and injuring 180 people. The accused men, including Nelson Mandela, were supposedly meant to be sentenced to death for the crimes committed against the law in the country. However, after hearing Mandela's speech, the judge ruled Nelson Mandela and the other men accused life imprisonment instead of the death penalty, as the judge came to realize it was not the white domination or the government that the black community wanted to overtake. All they wanted was to be in harmony with the white community and a just society with equal opportunities.
The crime of which the accused have been convicted, crime of conspiracy, is in essence one of high treason. Giving the matter very serious consideration, I have decided not to impose the supreme penalty, which in a case like this would usually be the proper penalty.
The media presence and the coverage of the Rivonia trial was significant. The trial was watched by the world. As a result, South Africa experienced pressure from the international community during and after the trial. The United Nations issued statements to the South African government appealing against the death sentence, which many expected. In addition, those listed as the co-conspirations during the Rivonia trial were in hiding or in exile. Many of them helped to raise funds for the accused and organized many anti-apartheid protests abroad. In the aftermath of the trial, the International Olympic Committee, FIFA, and other international sports bodies began terminating South Africa's membership to these organizations. By the end of the 1970s, South Africa was largely isolated from the participating in world sport. Cultural bodies around the world also terminated South Africa's membership. This source, the ANC President Oliver Tambo addresses a crowd outside South Africa House in Trafalgar Square in London. This address occurred soon after the Rivonia trial to maintain international pressure on the apartheid South Africa.
Well, we were horrified, of course. And of course, protest meetings were held in Britain.
We stand here for the millions of men and women in South Africa, born and forced to live all their lives in a concentration camp of colour. And we say that their will to be free is our will, their struggle our struggle, till their triumph too may be ours.
The anti-apartheid movement set up a world campaign, and we called it the World Campaign for the Release of All Political Prisoners. And it was able to get people to support the demand that these leaders should not be executed.
We printed from the underground in illegal presses hundreds of thousands of stickers, which simply had slogans like "The world is watching Pretoria."
The Rivonia trial had significant short and long-term consequences. Many observers note that by imprisoning the leaders of MK, the government was largely able to break the strength of the struggle inside South Africa, and for a time, open political activity was nearly impossible. Others note that the liberation movement strengthened their underground networks and continued to create organizational capacity outside of the country.
Firstly, the protests of the Black Rights Group against the white government were peaceful, but no one really cared about their views, because they were just complaining about their situation to the government, without creating any problems. After seeing that they were ignored, the group advocated the use of violence, so the white government became worried and reacted against their protests using firearms. These protests had social failures and successes. The main failures were the intimacy of relations between non-communist African nationalists and communists, made it difficult for many anti-communist observers to recognize that African nationalists could hold their own. This was especially true for white analysts, who assumed that in any such collaboration communists would dominate. The ending of the Rivonia trial did not appear to garner wide public opinion. While the main social successes were the press praised the police, the prosecutor, and the judge, and evidence of effective security contributed to growing white complacency and support for the government. Within a month or so, the police had smashed the idealistic and heroic but ineffectual group. White South Africa, confident that it faced no dangerous challenge from the United States or other Western states, was facing in a period in which white strength was to be consolidated rather than undermined, and what initiatives to enlist black collaboration and compliance were to be accelerated.
Throughout the Rivonia trial, writers made up many different stories about the African National Congress. An example of this is a quote written by a writer that is said to be written from Albert Lutuli's point of view. This is a quote taken from the testimony of Mr. Lutuli in the Rivonia trial. In this statement, it states that the apparent view of the African National Congress is to beat down the government with guns and batons. Mr. Lutuli further clarifies that this is a false statement and that the African National Congress wants no bloodshed, but if the government continues with apartheid, the African people will continue with their struggle. The most memorable speeches of the Rivonia trial were presented by Nelson Mandela. His first speech, Black Man in a White Man's Court, was his first court statement where he conducted his own defense. This speech responds to him accused for both promoting illegal striking as well as leaving the country without a passport. This speech was presented before the I am prepared to die speech, which is arguably his most famous speech. This speech is named I am prepared to die due to the last sentence of the speech where he says, but if it needs be, it is an ideal which I am prepared to take. In this sentence, he is relating to a previous statement in his speech where he talks about both black domination and white domination, and his ideal of a democratic and free society in which all persons live together in harmony and with equal opportunities. The closing statement by the Judge President Cortes de Wet states that he acknowledges both sides, going more in depth in the accused side and their arguments, and then proceeds to say under the law, the accused should be sentenced to the death penalty, but he has instead decided to give most of them lifelong imprisonment. He states the charges on the accused, stating that they have been accused for sabotage, conspiracy, acts of communism, and receiving money from foreign countries to aid them.
People were weeping with joy that they had not received the death sentence. A life sentence for the Rivonia trialists was one of the biggest boosts to us in the underground, giving us a sense that we could go on fighting.